Joining us now is Diman Ghazi, PhD, ML Tech Lead for Generative AI at Google Cloud. Today, Diman will take us through Vertex AI, unleashing the power of GenAI.
Hello, everyone. Just checking. Thank you. I cannot promise the session will be as much fun as Peter's session, but he had a couple of points at the end, which was a good segue to this session, which is more on Vertex and more the enterprise readiness on how you would actually build a production solution with GenAI in Google Cloud. I'm Diman Ghazi, as you see my name there, leading an ML team of ML solution engineers that we're working with enterprises to take this particularly GenAI solutions to production. I'm going to take a step back. Previous session was mainly on Bard, but I want to take a step back and give you the overview of the Google ecosystem and where Vertex stands, where Bard stands, and how they kind of they have common grounds together. I'm not going to get to the history. You've probably seen this, but my point that I want to make here is LLMs are not new. Google started this whole area in 2017 by introducing transformers. What changed really in 2023 and later 2022? What changed that made GenAI such a topic that you cannot avoid having those conversations in any developer community or even in personal parties at home? The main point that I want to make here is really ease of use and accessibility. And that started with when ChatGPT became available, people started playing with it, but then also all those models existed. It was not new, but then Bard and the party just went on, and you were able to try it. You were able to see the power yourself, but not just that, actually take it and put it to your production and use it in your systems. Just a quick comparison, again, as I mentioned, I want to clarify Bard versus Vertex, how they coincide. So Bard it was more a place for consumers, hobbyists to play with the technology, to get a sense for it. And then Google Cloud made this accessible for enterprises with some of the considerations in mind, like data control, safety and security. Also, when you put this in enterprise sort of solutions, you have considerations about cost and control for yourself. That's where Google Cloud introduced GenAI within Vertex as well as Duet AI. Again, I'm not going to get into details here, but just to call out, all of these models are coming from Google research. PaLM 2, which is the state of the art, Imagine, Chirp, which are different foundation models. We make this available in two different ways. Bard is one of them. Then there is also for users to access GenAI through our products and our solutions. And then the bottom part would be Vertex, which is really for builders like yourself, when you want to build a solution and take it to production. So as I mentioned briefly, Duet AI would be basically for users to access GenAI through Google Cloud Workspace or Google Cloud products, but Vertex is really as a platform for builders to use GenAI and build solutions and take it to reality. This is the overview of Vertex AI. A couple of things that I want to highlight here. So of course, we have the infra that is all built on TPUs, GPUs. That's a key component of LLMs. And generally in large models, right, that are the key component of GenAI. But what is important in a platform is that you have a choice, which is what we call Model Garden. Model Garden is a platform in Vertex that gives you access to not only first-party Google models, but also third-party and open source models. But this is all built on a foundation, a platform, an ML platform that has been around for years, basically. And on top of that, what we have added in the GenAI space is some of the orchestrations layers that you need with GenAI. And I'll talk more about that. That foundation model is great to have, but it's not sufficient. You really need to orchestrate your solution. And there are other considerations like tuning that Peter was mentioning that is important for you to have to be taking this and customizing this and building a solution. And also at the top, there are some particular AI solutions that we kind of enrich GenAI within that. But I'm going to focus on Model Garden and our foundation models, as well as the orchestration layer. So I briefly mentioned about Model Garden. If you look at this, Model Garden is, in the top, it's the first-party Google models like PaLM 2, Chirp, Cody, and so on. But then it's important that this is giving you also access to multimodal models, like if it's text or image or code. And then it's important that it gives you access to also industry-specific models, like MedPaLM, SecPaLM, which are tuned versions of PaLM. And also, as you can see, open source models are becoming super popular. Llama to Falcon, name it, Mistral recently, and also for third-party and partners model like Cloudy from Anthropic. So this is a platform that would give you access to all of that, but this is built on a ML platform that has been, again, it gives you a visibility or observability for debugging these models, for improving these models, and so on, and I'll touch upon that later. These are the foundation models. As I mentioned, these are critical to get started, but they are not sufficient. But also, these foundation models is important to keep in mind. There are different considerations with models, right? There is text, there is chat, there is embeddings, image, code generation, code completion, code debugging, as well as chirp for text-to-speech. So based on your use case, you can pick the base model. And also, these base models, they would have the different capabilities. For example, if you're looking for a classification, summarization, you would need text. If you want a multi-turn component to it, you would use chat, and so on. But this is a good start. Again, in real applications, you many times need to chain these models together and actually use, let's say, text with code, code for code generation, and so on. So about the platform, as I was mentioning, I wanted to just double down on Vertex and what's special about it. This is the ML, it's an ML platform with all the MLOps components like feature engineering, model training, model serving, monitoring, and so on. What is added in the GenAI world to this is similar components, but for GenAI. Because GenAI, for example, we know evaluation is one of the critical points, how you would evaluate a model, how you would pick the best model. So we need specific evaluation tool for GenAI. That's something that is added into the suite of sort of solutions that you have there. The other important thing is, I already mentioned about Model Garden, but one thing that I hear a lot for people that might be new to this whole GenAI world is, where do I start? How do you write a prompt? What is prompt engineering, this whole new term that we're hearing, right? And actually with that, let me pause and take a poll. How many of you have built a nice demo of GenAI basically demo in the last few months? Okay, not bad. How many of you have taken those demos and you have put it in production? Much less, much less. So playing with GenAI and building a cool demo is not as challenging as really taking it into production. And that's where a platform like this comes handy. Why? Again, when it's built on a platform that has pipeline, Kubeflow pipeline, and when you're tuning, you can have a visibility into those components. You can debug your tuned model. That's where you would need a platform. The other thing, as I was mentioning, when it's hard to get started for someone that is new, which I hear some of you have not built a demo before, there is a component that we have, which is more like a UI interface called GenAI Studio. Where you go there, there's a prompt gallery for different problems that you could solve, for different questions. So it's more like a guidance, an example for you to get an idea in terms of, if I want this to ask PaLM to summarize this article, how I would write it, how I would prompt it. So that comes handy. Actually, a lot of people are using it to get an idea. One other thing that I want to call out on the platform side is all API-based. So for developers that we love APIs and SDKs, this is a Python SDK is available. And you can pick and choose components of it, right? You don't need the whole platform. You can choose sort of pieces of that and use that API to add it to your full solution. Here I want to take a little sort of divert a little bit into, as I was mentioning at the beginning, foundation models are great to start, and Google is well positioned to provide them. But is it sufficient? Probably not. And why is that? Like, we need augmentation tools to customize the capability of those foundation models. And one of them Peter mentioned is tuning. And the other things that I know you heard a lot also about grounding, right? Grounding, tuning, extensions. And we can talk about what they are and why they're important. Let's start with tuning. So tuning is just a way for you to provide examples of input and output and tell the model to learn from that behavior and be able to better answer your questions. And this is critical. You have probably heard different types of tuning. You have heard prompt-efficient tuning, adapter tuning, full fine-tuning, but also there are other kinds of tuning that are really popular nowadays because data, and if I want to just differentiate LLMs and this whole GenAI with the classical ML that you might be familiar with, back then, we had to start with a data set first. We had to have a data to evaluate. We had to have a data to train. But with LLMs, you can start with no data. And then when it comes to tuning or evaluating, then is the challenge of, OK, how I'm creating that data, how much effort you should put into building the data set. And techniques like RLHF and RLAIF, which are becoming very popular, it's because when you put that system into production or you launch it, you can ask humans to give you feedback and collect that feedback. And using that feedback, you can kind of keep improving the model. And those are another tuning techniques that are available. RLHF is currently, which is reinforcement learning human feedback loop. But RLAIF is coming up later. So there are various types of tuning for different types of foundation models. But they have shown to be really critical in customizing your model and improving it for your specific task and use case. Extension. So one of the other things that we hear about LLMs is if they're trained on old data, how we can make sure that they are up to date with the latest data. How we can make, the other thing is also how you can make API calls, access the data, but not just that, make transactions and do some action. So extension is really, we're starting with some sort of Google extensions to give you access to some of those APIs, but eventually, currently this is in private preview, but extensions would be a way for you to build those to your LLM. So it would be an addition to your LLM to access to real data and also make transactions. And I think grounding was another thing that was highly discussed in the previous conversation. Grounding is also critical because we all hear about hallucinations and how we could control it. And these are all critical when you put this in production. They become even more important. So with grounding, it's just a way to base your answer on a factual data. So you provide the data that is like real and factual, and you get the model to put that into consideration when generating the output and tell you this is coming from this part of the article, for example. All right, so I mentioned foundation model is great, but we have other sort of considerations when you build a solution. The first part, which was like more augmented tuning and augmentation tools like tuning, grounding, and extension. What is the other part? You probably have heard LangChain a lot. And why LangChain became so popular? Because it's very rare that you just need one API call to an LLM and you're done. You need to chain your API calls to different solutions, and that orchestration is critical. And that orchestration could have its own challenges. It's like it could add latency to it. It could also how production ready this is, like in terms of scale. If you put this in production, could it address the scale of what you're expecting for your company, right? So orchestration is a critical point. And with Vertex search and conversation, that's more the layer, the orchestration layer that helps you to build that final solution. And let me give you an example, right? I want to have a conversation. I ask a question. That question could be potentially a search in a database. Or it could be actually a transaction. I want to book a flight. First of all, I want to see, OK, what are the flights available? So that might be a search. And then I want to book the flight. Or then I could actually ask for some sort of LLM-based questions. So it's a combination of search transactions. When I'm saying LLM-based conversation is more like if I'm asking a question that needs to be translated into a SQL query and get the response, you would be able to use LLM underneath to translate that query to SQL and then get the response and then build an answer based on that, right? So these are all three different components, but at the end, as a user, I want to come and just see a chat bot. I don't want to really experience like that distinct components of it. So that's why the orchestration is really important. And in Vertex, this was called GenApp Builder, if you have probably heard it before. What was the idea was, as for app developers, it should be really easy to come and you just define your data. You basically define your data store, whether it's website, whether it's articles, and you're able to build the app that would be just searching that and getting the response back to you. Right? That would be the Vertex search. And this is super powerful. This is leveraging embeddings and LLM itself underneath, but there's more to it because, of course, if Google is not good in search, who is? So we are really learning a lot from the Google, or bringing a lot of that knowledge from Google search, and we're making it available to Vertex search. Like, query rewriting is an important component, and there's a lot of sort of iterations when you're doing a search. So those components is all taken care of for you, but at the end, you just provide your data store, and you're making it available or building an app on top of that to search through it. The other thing is when you're searching, citation and summarization of the answer, that's also another critical point, because you want to be able to get a summarization of what was the answer, but also get a link to the actual documents to be able to go back to it. So this is one component that it's really critical when you're building the full solution with LLMs, search and conversation. So briefly, I want to also mention about conversation. I already touched upon that. So conversation would be that layer that is actually integrated. So the great point to keep in mind is that, so we had the foundation layer, we had search, and now conversation. These are all integrated. When I'm in conversation, I can use the search component to search articles. I could use LLM. It's all integrated into it. Into Vertex conversation. I could use LLM, but also not just that. I could define my prompt in terms of, okay, this is my prompt, get the answer back, put it in this format when you're returning it to the user. But then when it's conversation, it means that it's multi-turn. It has all the context of the conversation that you've had before, and also it can make transactions. Because for that, you would probably, you don't need LLM for that. Like if I want to just make an API call, as long as it identifies what API it needs to call, right? So that's the full suite of the components that you would need for building a full solution. Just to summarize, a couple of things that I want to highlight here, right? First of all, there were three themes that I wanted to touch upon. One is that the foundation model and the fact that we are really integrated to research to bring in the best and the best and the state-of-the-art models into Vertex, Google Cloud. And this is important in the GenAI world to even get started. But also, I wanted to call out the fact that that might not be sufficient. You would need augmentation tools like tuning, grounding, and extension to be able to customize those models even further and make them even behave better. And the third item that I wanted to call out is the orchestration layer, whether it's LangChain or more like building an app that has a component of search and conversation and LLM. This is a critical part of building your final application, GenAI application. And that's something that you should keep in mind. But also in terms of what are the other benefits of running this on Google Cloud and what it gives you is, as you realize, I was like emphasizing a lot on the platform. The platform is critical for you to basically, we are really making an effort into having this integrated AI portfolio in a platform that you have choices. And you can pick and choose, not just between like Google models, but also open source and third-party models. Not just that, but also, as I mentioned, this is all API-based. So you can choose solutions based on what you would need and using the ones that are relevant for you. And the other part that I want to emphasize is ease of use, which is critical. A lot of this probably could be done in Kubernetes alone, or like when you build it all from scratch yourself. The foundation model, let alone like that is a critical component that's not easy to train. It's like It's very costly, and not everyone can do that. But even let's say you have an open source model, it's not easy to serve those models and use them in your solution. So really, ease of use for developers is critical. And finally, we are really keen on enterprise readiness of those solutions. When we say enterprise readiness, there are few components that are important. One is, which I did not even talk about, is responsible AI. And that's critical for LLMs because you want to make sure that you're doing safety checks, because those models are powerful, but they could also be unexpected. They could also have unexpected behaviors and respond something that you wouldn't want. So the safety checks are critical, and having guardrails and checks is a critical component that we are really building, already integrating into our solutions. The other part is scalability, and for scalability means that you need accelerators, you need powerful machines, and again, you would need a place to use those computes. So that's another thing we're focusing on. And then the data governance and security and safety. So it's also very important when you're building a full solution and you're planning to take it to production for your customers. You want to make sure that the data is yours, the data is not used anywhere else, the data is not seen by anyone, and it's not used for tuning and improving the base models. And Google has been super clear about this, and we continue making sure that the safety and the data governance, basically you have the control over your data, and we have the safety checks in place. So the enterprise readiness is critical for us. With that, I think we have 9 minutes for questions. Thank you.